deal with the double pain of sexism and racism. And so a male-dominated field like hip-hop at that time especially, they were uniquely vulnerable and they were not to be trifled with.
Do you have any crazy stories of that era?
Oh
Any
man.
rappers? You know, with you being a comedian, were there any time that someone had to check you for a joke that you made, or?
No. Well, I had a I had a television show. My first television show was a show that Russell Simmons produced. It was called The New Music Report. And it was basically a sketch comedy show, but we interviewed artists and stuff like that. And what had happened was
Oh Lord.
Russell basically through his pioneering company, Def Jam, and in Rush Management, where he managed damn near everybody, and his friendships with rival record heads like Andre Harrell from Uptown. He didn't allow me to take too many shots because he was connected to everybody. So the only people I could really take shots on were people who were basically nobody knew or were West Coast artists, right? So unfortunately, and I write about this in this other book I'm writing, but I unfortunately took a shot at Queen Latifah. I didn't do it personally. I wrote a sketch for somebody. And I'm very embarrassed about it because it was an ugly thing. But whenever I've seen her subsequent, it's always just kind of like, and I understand where she's coming from because, you know, I imagine that she was experiencing a lot of that at that time because, you know, female rappers were a novelty back then. And jealous niggas like myself who couldn't rap were very much like, whatever, you know? And so that's not a funny story, but it is a true story.
Yeah, so there's a sense of regret of doing that.
Oh, man, totally, yeah.
But how could you?
I learned pretty quick. That was one of the things I learned. I learned very quick about the politics of what I was doing, is that I learned to avoid realities like that because sisters deal with the double pain of sexism and racism. And so a male-dominated field like hip-hop at that time especially, they were uniquely vulnerable and they were not to be trifled with. So my bad.
I guess there's a level of grace that I still would probably give yourself, you know, of trying to find your footing,
Totally.
you know, trying to make a name for yourself. I'm sure you wasn't going into it like I'm trying to like hurt her.
No.
But you saw an opportunity for laughter and...
Yeah, that, and also I was like running out of, I didn't have material, I didn't have any targets to, it was like, you can only do this, boop, boop, boop. So there she showed up, you know. So.
Did people laugh at it?
I don't know, because it's a television show. So
okay.
It wasn't like we had a studio audience. It was a late night show too. Yeah. Very few people I know remember it. I know Q-Tip watched it because he put my name in a rap record, so I was very happy about that. In fact, I was thrilled by that.
Now, as far as like just with that and the kind of roll out of the Queen Latifah story, and I appreciate you for sharing it. Do you think her hearing that would like maybe hopefully sit well with her energy so that she can maybe put that under the rug?
I mean, I hope so. I know that she's been very vocal about people being critical of her body image and things of that nature. And I can imagine it was very painful. So I would hope that her and anybody who might have perceived that I might have been hurtful, I would hope that they would feel better and recognize that, you know, I'm not, there's no malice involved. It was more desperation.
I guess it happened so many years ago. What would need to happen? Are you at peace with it? Or would you like to kind of get her acknowledgement of like, you know what, I understand where you was coming from?
Oh, I wouldn't be in need of her acknowledgement, but or even desire her acknowledgement, but I would. My primary concern would just be that she find a way to come to terms with the fact that the culture was where it was at that time, and that she could recognize that she broke ground. And a lot of times you don't provoke that kind of response if you're not striking a chord. So she's legendary, and she.
As it comes with the kind of the territory.
She made it. You know,
yeah. So it makes me think about your stand-up career. What kind of comedian were you coming up? Were you like fearless? Were you like edgy? How would you describe your style?
I I would say that I did characters primarily, but my act was more like performance art. It was silly. I had so much silliness, ridiculous. It was just like nonstop silliness. Like, that was it. That's my style, and it worked famously. Because it was a universal act. In other words, it wasn't culturally specific. So I was obviously able to transition into the mainstream. I was able to cross over pretty quickly. As a matter of fact, so quickly that my comedy career just kind of went zip, like bye, because I was working at the highest prices, doing other things. And so yeah, it was definitely very silly. I was very philosophical because I always had a real interest in
Yeah, that was
philosophy.
one thing I've always like naturally picked up about you in reflecting about your body of work. That's why I asked about your parents, were they educated? Because there seems to be an education about you that's not just I'm just uh off the top of the head. I'm kind of more maybe methodical in my
Hmm.
approach. It feels like, did you go to school? Did you go to
Yes.
Juilliard? And like,
Yeah.
it
Hmm.
seems very kind of crafted too.
Yeah, I mean, I was college educated. I dropped out of college junior year to work on Spike Lee's More Better Blues, um, because Spike saw me at the Apollo and gave me that opportunity. I worked on that set for 2 weeks before I even had lines, but then he gave me some lines, and that's how I got into the movie business. But yeah, I was educated. I mean, I went back to school to finish my degree and so forth. So I had that kind of a background. Yeah.
Hmm. Now, being a stand-up, has your stand-up changed over the years? Your approach to comedy?
I think it has changed because I'm I'm of a certain age. I don't really identify with anybody who doesn't have erectile dysfunction. I'm like in that sweet spot. So yeah. So obviously it's informed by my experience today, um, but it's the same shit. The same shit, different age.
What is the drive of your comedy? What is your voice? What are you trying to create with your art?
I think I'm still trying to do the same thing, deconstruct reality, whether it be absurd things or things that are plaguing people. Or, my whole thing was always about, because I grew up during the crack boom. One thing I learned about that was how to cheer people up in the midst of catastrophe. And so that's always been my energy. Like, no matter how hard or painful or difficult things are, I'm the motherfucker that's like, hee, like you be all right. Like, hee, I'm
Yeah.
just almost like a court jester or a fool. I think there's an important role for cats like that.
Yeah, and it seems that there's different types of comedians. Like you said,
Oh,
you
yeah,
might be coming in to make you feel good, and then you got a comedian that some may label mean spirited, or
that's
like
true.
they're like it's coming from a different
A dark
energy.
place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's when I went out, when I go out now just to do spot dates or just to show up at a club. The main energy of younger comics is dark, super dark. I'm just like, oh, I gotta get the fuck out of here. Y'all niggas making Holocaust jokes. Like, I can't fuck with y'all niggas. Like, but not like, they're like, yeah, Hitler, he wasn't so bad. Everybody got their faults. I'm like, all right, I'm like, all right, motherfuckers. Like, so
Yeah.
it's almost like, but I understand it. I understand that. It's about pushing it as far as you can push it, and I'm cool with it.